And for more on the US elections, we can go to Richard Johnson, who's lecturer in US politics at Queen Mary University of London. Good morning, Richard. We're just 2 days after he was elected. Donald Trump has made his first appointment, Susie Wiles as Chief of Staff. In his first term in office, Trump went through 4 chiefs of staff. Is Susie Wiles likely to have more staying power than her predecessors?
That's certainly the plan from the Trump team. The first 6 months of Trump's first term as president were frankly a disaster in terms of personnel management. I mean, people were just cycling in and out. There was just sort of a sense of chaos which struck the administration. And a lot of people in Team Trump are determined for that not to happen again. And one of the reasons why it happened the previous time, I think, is quite frankly that not many people, including perhaps even Trump himself and certainly many around Trump, expected him to win. So they were sort of caught off guard by the victory. And there was also some problems in the transition process because Chris Christie had previously been head of the transition team, but then Jared Kushner, Trump's son-in-law, doesn't like Chris Christie because Christie put Jared's father in jail. So then Christie was taken off. It was all very chaotic in the last minute. This time, the plan, the plan is to have a much smoother transition, and they've been thinking about it for a much longer time relative to 8 years ago.
And after Trump's first term in office, many of his former staffers, including one of them, John Kelly, his former chief of staff, turned against him, and they actually warned US voters against voting for him in this election. And there also was a sense that perhaps being a member of a Trump administration back between 2017 and 2021 could be the kiss of death for somebody's political life. Is that different now, or will he have trouble attracting people?
Well, I mean, he's not the previous time. I think there were 2 issues. So there were people that he appointed because he thought them to be loyal to him, but they were generally often inexperienced people he knew from show business. So people who'd been contestants on The Apprentice were brought in to the White House and just weren't suited for that role. And then, there was a sense, I think, from Team Trump that, oh, well, actually, we need some experienced people. We need some people who know what they're doing. But a lot of those people weren't necessarily loyal to Trump or didn't believe in some of the things that Trump was doing, but they were brought in because they were seen as capable. And I guess the approach this time is to think about people who are both loyal and capable. And I think there's probably a bit more of a pool actually now to choose from, because the Republican Party itself has been transformed in a way over these 8 years that it hadn't been 8 years ago, where basically there's been a sifting process. People who don't like Trump are basically already out. They're not part of Republican circles anymore, and those who are pro-Trump, they're the ones who are still around. So in a way, I think they have it's a clearer delineation of who to put in this time than last time, when it was a bit murkier and a bit more confusing for them.
And we're going to have more appointments in the coming days. Some of them stand to be quite controversial, such as Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who is an anti-vaccine conspiracy theorist. And if he gets appointed Secretary of Health, that is quite likely to be very controversial. Is there any chance of congressional pushback on any potential appointments?
Well, with the Senate that Trump's looking like he will have, with about 53 Republican senators, I haven't checked the final tallies this morning, 53, 54, then he has a buffer now. If it had been 50, 51, it would mean that the moderate Republicans, namely Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins from Alaska and Maine, respectively, would have an effective veto over a lot of Trump's picks, and they might want to exercise some objection to it. But Trump can lose a couple of Republican senators and still have enough Republican senators to get his picks through. And I think that it's just a question of, two or three more votes, but it changes the dynamic quite considerably in terms of who Trump can get in. And I'm not expecting, I mean, it's always possible, and sometimes there are kind of idiosyncratic reasons why particular senators might have a beef against a nominee. I'm not expecting too much difficulty and too much pushback for Trump in getting these nominations through, even though, as you say, a Robert F. Kennedy would be very controversial, both for his attitude to vaccines, but also in this very partisan world. It's quite remarkable that someone who's been from one of the great Democratic families is now going to be put into administration by a Republican president with a report from a Republican Senate. But I suspect he will sail through, actually.
And Donald Trump has a long laundry list of promises that he campaigned quite strongly on, with mass deportations as one, tariffs, prosecution of his political rivals, and there is also, of course, Project 2025, which he had tried to distance himself from, but it's very much the plan is to implement it. How many of these plans will be implemented, or will some of them fall by the wayside?
Well, the curious thing is, I would say that actually Trump does not have a very clear or detailed legislative agenda. I mean, most of the things that you've discussed are things that Trump can do through executive action. That is to say, he can do it without Congress. He has existing legal authority. But it's quite curious because he's now expected to have what they call the trifecta, the House, the Senate, and the White House in Republican hands, and a favorable Supreme Court we might as well also throw into the mix. And yet, in terms of what he wants to pass through Congress, it's not particularly clear. I mean, he is going to pass probably some tax cuts. That's what he did in his first term. He's talked about these no tax on tips. I'm sure there'll be some tax cuts for business and higher earners as well. That's seen as that's the kind of echo of trickle-down economics, which is oddly part of Trumpism in spite of its significant working class electoral support. But beyond that, it's not really clear what he wants to do in legislative terms. I mean, he has, as far as I know, still no serious plan about the American healthcare system. That could require some legislation if he wanted to change that, but we just really don't know. I think on trade and tariffs, he's going to make a move. He has cared about this issue since the 1980s, and he has a lot of executive leeway on that. Immigration, he does have some legal power, some of it dating back to the 18th century with the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, which he has said on the campaign trail he's willing to use. That would allow him to fast track some deportations and kind of skip over normal judicial processes. Last time that law was used by a president, I believe, was in World War II. But Trump has said that he'd be willing to use it. It's meant to be used for a wartime emergency, but it's up to the president to declare that the United States is being invaded. And Trump has made that designation in the past as used to be able to use some executive authority for building the border wall. I suspect he'll make that declaration for the purposes of using his authority under the Alien Enemies Act to accelerate deportations.
Thank you very much for that. Richard Johnson, lecturer in US politics at Queen Mary University of London.
Thank you.